call. I am not going to be answering any more questions. By the way, if you do have questions, I won't be able to answer them live because we do have a couple of hundred people on. But I do have my son Kenneth standing by to help you out. It seems like we have enough people on, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I know you value your time, so can you give me a 2 in the chat box if you're ready to watch me write off $300,000 right in front of you? Let's see if those 2s are coming in the chat box. Oh yeah, they're definitely coming in the chat box. And not only that, we're also going to walk you through the process to fully audit proof that $300,000 write-off. And can you imagine if I can audit proof a $300,000 write-off? Imagine audit proof an additional $1,000 write-off, an additional $2,500, $10,000, $5,000, whatever it is. I know it's a lot of good stuff. So I have 3 questions for you. How many of you would like to turn everyday expenses into write-offs? How many of you want to permanently lower your taxes without fearing an IRS audit? And how many of you want to build wealth like the wealthy people do, the rich people? I know I do. And how many of you want to be recession-proof, especially with everything that is going on? If you do, give me a 2 in the chat box. I want to see those 2s popping right in. I see those 2s. Well, to start off, I am Karla Dennis, and I am the CEO of Karla Dennis and Associates, Inc. I have been in this industry for over 20 plus years, and I am a tax strategist. I hold a master's in taxation, an undergrad degree in accounting, and I help taxpayers all over the United States reduce their tax bill. I own my own company, and I have several 40 to 50 full-time employees, and this is literally what we do. I have been featured in media outlet talking about this very thing. I have been featured on national television talking about all the changes and the breaking tax laws and going over all of this. And I'm not showing you these things to toot my own horn. I'm showing you this to illustrate I know a thing or two about taxes and how to proactively reduce them for my clients, and a lot of people find value in what I'm able to do for them. And all of my years and experience of helping business owners not only reduce taxes, but save on taxes year after year, I've been doing this for about 3 decades. I've never seen anything work for so many people who have never had any experience, and I've never seen so many people do it in such a reasonable time frame as what you're going to be learning right here today. And the last call, I got a lot of messages saying we talked about results too much, so I'm just going to speed through these results and just flip right through them. But if you want to see 4-figure results, we've gotten 4-figure results. If you want to see 5-figure results, Alex wiped out $60,000 off of his tax bill. If you want to see 6-figure tax savings, we had multiple students reduce their taxes over $100,000. We have had all sorts of results. Kimberly here was using TurboTax, but she was able to come back and save literally $48,000 her first year. And you can see Maya here was able to write off $35,000 consistently every single year, and she knew nothing about taxes, thinking taxes were hard. As you can see, we have pages and pages of results. And here's Joanne. She dropped her tax bill by $7,200 after owing for years, year after year. And do not take my word on this. You will have a chance at the end of this call to go through these results literally with a fine-tooth comb. And the reason why these people are getting these results is because they're literally just filling in the blank. And by the end of this call, you will know the simple strategy I use. You'll even see me do this literally over my shoulder, and we're going to audit proof a $300,000 write-off right in front of you. And all the results that you have seen these people get, a lot of the people had no prior tax knowledge attending this call are from my mastermind course, the Tax Reduction Strategy Program. Now, hold on. I just want to be clear. You're not going to get the chance to join this right now. You can't join this right now, and this isn't what this call is about. What this call is about is across the thousands of people I've helped, I've seen patterns and trends behind the people that get these results. And I felt the best way to bring you value today and the fastest time possible is to show you this strategy and then show you all the shortcuts, all the patterns people have followed. Narrow it down to a few cliff notes and then just give it to you on this call. Then you'll be able to go out and apply it to your own situation. And the reason I created this call is that, I ran into a problem. Long story short, I achieved the American dream. I had an incredible family with 4 motivated and driven sons. I have spoken at events with some of the top minds in real estate, accounting, and tax strategy. I have truly fulfilled the dreams I wanted for my life. The problem I had is that this is irrelevant to you because you're not looking to build a tax firm, but something was frustrating me and soon became quite eye-opening. And for context, I have been in this game for literally 3 decades. I don't like to say 3 decades, but that's just the truth. I have a successful tax firm with thousands of clients, and I am good at what I do. No one laid this out for me. I had to constantly work at it, and I have paid the way. And while my business's focus is more on planning for future tax situations, people still come to me to file simple tax returns for them. And far, far too many times, I still see W-2 wage earners and business earners alike owing more than they should in taxes. But what is relevant to you is I have been able to crack the code and show people how to truly write off almost anything without fearing IRS, teaching them how to never leave Uncle Sam a tip again. And I have been able to teach hard-working people like you to not give IRS more than their fair share. And I found a breakthrough strategy that works day in and day out, no matter if you're a business owner or you're a W-2 wage earner. This will work for you. So I decided to share it with a few clients to see if it was possible for others, and they got the amazing results. It was saving our clients thousands of dollars. I wanted others to get the same results. I wanted them to use the write-offs that the same way the Fortune 500 companies do and have them completely audit-proof it without needing any prior knowledge. I didn't want them to have to understand taxes like me, where even W-2 employees are getting more refunds from the government. That meant I had to create a literal, simple, repeatable process and system. And I'm not joking. Later on in this event, you are literally going to see this framework. Here is what it looks like. We're not going to give it all to you right now because you wouldn't even understand what to do with it. But it's a literal framework with a repeatable step-by-step process. And if you stay for the entire event, you're going to be able to get this literal framework for free. But you have to stay to the entire end of this educational event. I have to admit, this is the part of the call that I always cringe at because I have to talk about me. But it's important to mention that I didn't want to be a guru. I didn't want to be out there paying for marketing or paying for television spots, just pointing at myself like, look at me, look at me. I literally wanted the results to speak for themselves. And that's what was happening. My clients were going out and they were sharing it with their friends because they were getting such big tax savings. One client told me later, they had said, she blueprinted the tax game, which I honestly thought was hilarious. But I've known for a long time, you don't want to follow the person who's the loudest. See, you don't want to talk about it. You have to be about it. I'm sure you've seen all of these people in whatever field they're in. They're the ones that are screaming the loudest, yet have the least experience. Yes, they're attractive, the glitzy person, but you want to be able to step back and look and see who's not talking, who's got their nose in the book, who's working constantly just like you do. Those are the people you want to listen to. And you want to watch and you want to get to know them. As you can see here, Jeff Bezos at the start of Amazon. Not such a great picture, but it shows the level of hard work that's dedicated and necessary to achieve greatness. It's not noisy, but it gets the results. And that's the person you want to listen to. And one of the first clients I had shared this with, who was able to drop their tax bill by $110,000 to zero, was so elated by this that she actually asked to sit down with me and ask, how did you come up with this? And that's actually made me take a pause. I had to think about it because it's not what people think it's like. The road to making your first $1 million is just easy. It's fun. It's effortless. Yeah, right. That's the furthest from reality. That's the furthest from the truth. In fact, the reality is, it is literally just the opposite. The reality really was, I just wanted to go to school, get a good job, and work my career and just do that. The problem was, when I had mastered the craft, when I was at my best, it got to a point where I was really struggling so much. I was working so many hours and I was literally missing my family. I just wanted to provide for my family. That's why I went into tax strategy. That's why I started this. I wasn't some tax genius. I mean, I failed my accounting classes twice. I never even considered myself a business owner. All I wanted was just stability and a comfortable, stress-free life. That's it. I just wanted to go to work, put some time in, come back to my family, and enjoy the moments with my children and my husband. And that was it. But pursuing this left me in a place where I was literally stuck, scraping by. I was desperate to get out. This should have been literally the end of my story. This was supposed to be how my life played out because I did it all the right way. I mean, after all, look at where I started. Growing up in Compton practically comes with an expectation of failure. Every day was a struggle growing up in Compton. But I couldn't let that situation define who I was. I was so frustrated because I had done everything the right way, the safe and proven way first. I went to school. I got the good grades. I graduated college. But just like everyone who comes out of college, taxes aren't at the front of your mind. So for a few years of unpaid taxes during college had literally put me in debt. But I began looking for a job. I'm on the way towards building my career, my happily ever after. The problem was those words, right, safe, proven, meant get into the everyday conveyor belt machine people get into, the machine that people are in right now. A lot of people on this call, you're probably in it right now because everyone tells you that's the right way. Go to school, get a good job, work 30, 40 years, and on April 15th, just file your tax return. Whatever, TurboTax, use the CPA tells you, just do it. That doesn't work anymore. Now, the machine worked briefly for me so I could get my foot in the door at a tax law firm where they helped me put a name to the machine. You know, that saying, the rich keep getting richer. I was finally seeing why people say this. I realized that the machine was the poor tax system. It's the system most people find themselves in, where every single dime you make, you pay taxes and then spend what is left. But the rich make their money spending on what they want first, then leave the government what's left, only able to tax them on what is left. This was mind-boggling for me. I am not kidding. In a perfect world, you work, you make money, your government tells you how much you owe, and you pay that, right? And in a sense, that could be the case. But that's a talk for a totally different time. I find this always cracks me up because it's true. But when you think about it, it's a rather morbid reality. Essentially, the government already knows how much you owe every year. But they don't tell us. We are kept in the dark, left to fend for ourselves. And trying to guess your fair share should never end with prison as a possible outcome. I was learning all of this at the law firm, and it really was valuable information. But at the same time, I was really just a small fish. As a new kid on the block, I was often given the less desirable audit cases where I was representing clients before the IRS, where auditors would come to the firm to contest or verify evidence for cases that they were auditing. The firm gave me a case that was for the lowest staff member, and I was representing a client who was so disorganized, did not know how to take write-offs, and I had to go down to the IRS office and meet with an auditor. From the moment I walked into the IRS office, my anxiety spiked through the roof. I felt cold. I had to suppress my shivering. The auditor, Mr. Huxley, which obviously is not his real name, people, but the rest of this is horrifically true. Huxley was a tall, slender man who just looked constantly clammy. You guys have seen people like that. As he approached the table, I got a whiff of his stench, and it literally smelled like death to me. Without even acknowledging my presence, he started placing his briefcase on the table, unpacking his pens and pencils and calculator, and tightening the already strained knot in his tie. I stood to introduce myself before his eyes instantly locked on mine and cut me off with a curt, "Is this everything?" I knew then this wasn't going to go well, but I quickly composed myself and attempted to begin my audit defense. I was in a complete panic because I wanted to do a good job on my first case. The client was sweating me prior to this meeting because they knew they were in trouble. They had a huge tax bill. The IRS disallowed some of their write-offs, and Huxley was sent to collect. So I started on my first defense. He quickly shut it down with a snide remark and a swipe of his pen, crossing out the defense. Over and over and over again, he repeated this, and I failed to even defend a single case. I was so scared. The further we went, the more my heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest. It was beating so fast, people. I was cornered, and he knew it. But by this time, Huxley was finished playing with his meal and concluded the legal slaughter. My client was stuck not only with the original disallowed write-offs, but also a few more inconsistencies that the auditor uncovered. The client had to pay over $70,000 to the government. I couldn't move from my chair for over an hour. I went home devastated. I was petrified of the IRS, unsure of my career. If it meant I had to be subject to this again. It was too much of a time commitment. It was so stressful. I just knew if I came home and did some side hustle, some tax work, tax compliance, I would feel okay. But the truth is, I didn't want to deal with the IRS anymore and work IRS audits anymore. I started doing taxes on my kitchen table by word of mouth. One client told another, and it went on from there. The returns were simple because they were W-2 basic employees, and they did not have a lot of write-offs. There was barely enough money to keep our heads above water, but it was consistent work, and the career was worth it, right? Give it a couple more years, and then surely it'll be happily ever after. Fast forward a couple of years later, nope, not the case. The more tax returns I did, the longer the hours and the more money I made. But at the end of the day, I was working harder and harder. I was paying more in taxes as well as still paying off tax debt. The poor tax system was working as intended for the government. I wasn't working to make more. I was working to avoid getting swallowed by my debt. I was married, and I knew I wasn't going to be financially stable for years. And that was the cold, hard reality. Going down that path, I realized I wasn't going to be happily ever after. Just a long line of Huxleys, IRS agents drooling at the thought of taking my money and my clients' money. And it was pretty humbling when I realized that after all the time I put in investing into my career, schooling, my business, I was still stuck in the poor tax system, the system that operates without our best interest in mind. It was like going to the slot machines. If I didn't play the slot machine, I'd be swallowed by my debt and taxes. If I did play the slot machines, I still lost because I was stuck right where I am right now, putting up a futile effort until my debt and taxes swallowed me anyway. It was a dark time when I realized that what was supposed to be the risk-free route was actually risk-free. It took all the risk away because I didn't even have to worry about winning. I just automatically failed. Yeah, it was risk-free. I felt like I was in that movie Misery. I cringe whenever I see it. But if you don't know it, there's a scene where an author is held hostage, tied down, and a psycho fan hobbles him with a sledgehammer to prevent him from escaping. That's how I felt. Anytime I tried to build a life for my family, the IRS would cripple me. That's what I felt like. And I thought to myself, when do I get a breath? When can I provide for my family with such instability? When do I get to enjoy my life? When can I stop worrying about money? When can I stop standing in a grocery aisle having to choose between food and diapers? I was in the tax system for the poor, and I was a tax person myself. I got into this to prove that Compton wouldn't define me, that I was proof that people could decide for themselves how their life went, not be resigned to the options their environments offered them. And I didn't feel like that person. And the questions kept piling on. Am I going to be safe next week, next month, next year? How on earth could I retire? Will I have enough not to be in a nursing home? And the biggest thing was, I wasn't trying to be a millionaire. I just wanted to wake up happy and not work out of fear. I sat there stressed out over bills, shamed by the amount of money I was making, overall not getting fulfillment out of what I was doing. And all I could think was, I want to get out of the poor tax system, but I don't know how. I was finally at my breaking point. I was working another 80 plus hours a week, barely making any money, and it just hit me. After years of education, starting a company, this right here was the grand reward of scraping by. Most of my life spent in agony. I knew that I needed to transition back to helping clients with tax law. Something, anything that was even slightly more complex than standard tax return. So with my last few $100, I decided to put an ad in the yellow pages that said, I solve tax problems. Someone responded and needed help with the write-off. A $300,000 write-off. Are you kidding me? This is it. This is my lifeline. An impossible audit. Her name was Amanda, and she had written off a yacht, but it was being disallowed by the IRS. It was over $300K, and she was entrusting me to figure out how to convince the IRS to allow it. So when I finally sat down and defined what I wanted in life, fulfillment, financial stability, freedom, choice, I knew that the poor tax system wasn't going to take me there. Once I defined what failure was in my life, which was not getting those things, choice, freedom, financial stability, stress-free, it was really clear one system was better. And it wasn't just complying, letting someone else decide how much you owe. Because when people tell you it's the right way, the way to avoid risk, the way to avoid failure, but if you actually define what ultimate failure is, this is my definition of ultimate failure. Waking up at 60 years old, not having anything to show for my life, still struggling, still unfulfilled, and full of regret. That is ultimate failure. Because by that point, you may be able to turn it around, but more likely, that's where you are condemned to stay. People think that if you're still in the poor tax system, they're somehow going to avoid that. They're not. No amount of going down that road is going to take you where you want to go. In fact, you're basically driving in the wrong direction. And the further you go in that direction, the further you'll be from where you actually want to go. And I realized there's no reward for that 20, 30 years of suffering. It's suffering met with that ultimate failure. I knew The tax system for the rich would lead to true wealth and financial freedom for myself and my family. And the tax system for the rich is going to be a challenge getting up that mountain, getting up to the top. But at the top is guaranteed freedom and fulfillment. And the struggle is worth it. And then a humbling thing I did was put up a chart, and it defined for me in blocks how many months I had lived and how many I had left. I realized if I kept driving in this direction, that the further I went down this road, the longer it took before I turned around. I was going to run out of time to make that change from the road I didn't even want to be on in the first place. Look, I was 33 years old at the time, and the reward waiting for me if I stayed on this road for 10 years, I'd be 43 with nothing to show for it. Still giving up a shameful amount of money in taxes, still struggling and frustrated and more stuck than ever. And if I stayed there for another 10 years, I'd be 53 years old with very few options and no wealth to pass on to my children. That ultimate failure is pretty much going to happen. So I said right then and there, I'm doing tax strategy. I decided to get my clients and myself into the rich tax system. I told my friends and family I am going back to do what I did at the law firm, but they didn't get it. They would say things like, why would they need you? Can't they just use TurboTax? Can't they just use a CPA? Aren't there just a list of write-offs out there that they can take? I was fighting an uphill battle trying to explain this to people who just didn't get it because they too were in the poor tax system. When people look at their taxes between now and trying to get to their point of freedom, it's like a block, a barrier, keeping you from where you want to be. I get it. Between now and financial freedom, people believe there is a block keeping them from the shortest path possible to that freedom, with the shortest path being tax strategy. And that block is all the things we tell ourselves. You can't do that. You need time, money. It's too risky. So they are willing to shrug it out and go the long way just to remain an employee, not putting anything into their taxes, continue to pay Uncle Sam a tip every year after year. And then you have to ask yourself why people think this. People truly believe you just need a list of write-offs and you can lower your tax bill. That is completely false. Do you really think Fortune 500 companies use a list of write-offs to pay literally nothing in taxes? Absolutely not. Americans are losing $460 billion on their taxes. I mean, people can't guess at their write-offs. So it's better for them just to pay what the government tells them, right? Just put your info in TurboTax and churn out a number, and you pay that and go on with your day. Because for TurboTax, that's a sport. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're built for. They're not going to cheat you like that, but they cheat you another way. And that companies like TurboTax actively lobby to prevent taxes from being simple, to prevent the government from putting out a simple form, because if that simple form existed, no one would ever use TurboTax again. And most CPAs and tax software for that matter, and even with all that effort, they still don't know how to lower your tax bill. But hold on. Through TurboTax, you have the ability to talk to a live person, experts, right? But here's the thing. They are all CPAs too. All they know how to do is just fill out your return, not actually show you how to lower your tax bill. It's still the same tax compliance, not tax strategy, or how the tax system works for the rich. This is the way the system is set up. You're taught to go to school, get a nice job, and pay your taxes. You're giving the rich exactly what they want. You're on the hamster wheel, paying all the taxes and getting drowned in debt, while the ones who are in the tax system for the rich are laughing. See, the rich outsmart the government, while the aim is often for the rich to support the poorest through the payment of taxes. This is rarely realized. In reality, The middle class absorb the biggest tax burden while the richest use the tax system for the rich to outsmart the government on taxes. Yet, at the same time, Fortune 500 companies like Amazon and FedEx have figured out how to make the tax system work for them as well. And they are reaping in major dollars without paying a single dime in taxes. They are happy you don't know how it works. They are laughing, and that should upset everyday working Americans. It upsets me. That's why I need to bring this information to the people, to level the playing field and snatch the rug right out from under them, because working lives matter. So if all that stuff is what's blocking you from the shortest path to financial freedom, and avoiding the block means staying as a W-2 or a business owner in a tax compliant system, then just remove the block. Put yourself into the tax system for the rich. And I knew the key to removing that block was I had to create a strategy that doesn't have those things. It can't have a large upfront investment. It can't require more than just you to complete it. It can't require years of experience, and it can't require especially luck or creativity factor. Everyone should be able to just do it, rinse, and repeat this process, because the path to the rich tax system isn't paved. There's no flashy sign directing you exactly where to go. But that poor tax system, it is paid. It's a treadmill. You'll end up in it without even moving. You will need that alternative path. And just in case you guys are skeptical now, right now, here's Valerie, who saved nearly $9,000 using this system to get her money back from an audit without a six-figure investment. And here's Maya, now able to write off $35,000 every single year, again, without a six-figure investment. And here's Yami. Yami didn't even want to wait until he was 60 or 70 years of age to enjoy his life. He learned he could turn his hobby of building custom computers into a business and write off his electric bill. Now he has the ability to turn everyday expenses into write-offs. He can use it to keep building wealth. No 30, 40 years of suffering. He gets to enjoy his life right now. How awesome is that? Because having success now means you'll be successful later. And successful later means you would have something to pass on to your children. That's the benefit of this. That's what led me to being able to run my tax consultancy firm with my 4 sons. So I knew this alternative route was going to be necessary in writing off that $300,000 yacht. I began to prepare for the audit, but I didn't know where to start looking for it. I spent days researching how to write off that yacht. 70,000 pages of the tax code, and nothing could help me. I just wanted to come home and read to my son, Kenny. Loved to see him because he made me happy, and I needed to get my mind off of that audit, Mr. Huxley, and those taxes. We snuggled up on the couch and we read his favorite book, Brown Bear, What Do You See? And as we were reading, boom, it finally hit me. Each sentence in the book used every single identifier in their simplest form. Who, what, when, where. I grabbed a few more books from the shelf. They all use the same sentence structure. This got me thinking. We use simple language to teach our children. Why aren't we doing the same with our write-offs? The key to writing off almost anything was how the write-off justification was presented. It seemed rather simple. I mean, all the Fortune 500 companies have already been doing this since forever. However, taxpayers haven't caught on to this. With this, a person doesn't have to pay someone else to do it simply because they lack the knowledge. A person can fill out a form to craft a story for their tax write-offs and cut their own tax bill in half. They can start using it even when they're still an employee, when they see how fast and easy it is to start a business. A person can set that business up the right way the first time and avoid headaches. This cuts out every barrier. TurboTax, H&R Block, hiring expensive accountants, you name it. I saw this and went all in. But the problem was, as I was developing this, I didn't have the strategy the Fortune 500 companies were using. I couldn't pull from it. That was their proprietary information. I was going to have to be the one to make it. I was the index case, the patient zero. I had to work with my client trying to implement the fill in the blank. I needed to figure it out, but it was really bumpy at first. In the beginning, some got success and some didn't. It was hit and miss, 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 hit, miss, 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 hit. And that it would work for some clients, but not another. Don't get me wrong, there was success, but some of these write-offs, it was just too many were being disallowed. Eventually, I was able to get to a point where the write-offs fully worked. Oh, it was great. I was so happy. But I realized to get from all the failures to where they were getting accepted, that process of fine-tuning I had been doing all along was even more important than the strategy that I initially thought. So I started itemizing every change I made, when I used it, how I used it, which ones worked, which ones didn't work. And that pattern started to form. I started to see it. I realized this pattern needed to be archived. And so I had to completely redo the fill in the blank framework that I had built around that process, completely redid it. And now it was perfect. I knew. I finally understood the way I could get the write-off of the yacht. I remember I was heading downtown LA and I had my whole plan in place. As I entered the room, I stopped dead in my tracks as an awful chill ran down my spine. Huxley had been assigned as the agent to conduct the audit case for my yacht and was nauseatingly giddy to see me again. But I knew I was confident in my case, and I began to implement the framework to which Mr. Huxley proceeded to dismiss at any chance he could. He shredded every attempt I made and provided an explanation. He did it with an utmost twist sense of glee. Moments like this were why he got up in the morning, what gave him life, what gave him purpose. By this time, I got back in my car in the parking garage, and I didn't know what hit me. I had lost again, and I was so confused. I was in such a fog as I left that office. I did gather myself to request an extension, even though I didn't have any hope in it, and mostly did it just to follow protocol, as I didn't have any new ace up my sleeve. I am sitting here thinking, how could this be possible? The IRS had approved multiple write-offs, all in the same vein of this yacht, time and time again. Now, this doesn't have merit? If this framework failed here on the biggest stage, I can't in good conscience call myself a tax expert. I'm going to have to go back to doing simple returns if I can even keep my business after this failure. And then a month later, I got a letter in the mail informing me that there had been an independent review of my client's case. They had concluded that my justification for the yacht's write-off had been sufficient. To say I celebrated was an understatement. I mean, my framework had proven itself when the stakes were at the highest. Amanda was so thrilled, we started looking at what else we could write off for her. We started churning out cases left and right, rinse and repeat on another write-off. And then I did it again and again. It was like I had a win button literally on my desk. I just took out the framework, followed it step by step, added in the info Amanda gave me, and out popped another audit-proof tax write-off. I dealt with Mr. Huxley many times after that, and this framework forced him to begrudgingly admit each of my write-offs had sound explanations. My list of clients grew exponentially. I was making more in 3 days than a month at my old job. I now generate more in 2 days than a year at my old job. Fast forward a couple of months, I have grown a sizable business. I was truly and abundantly building wealth. I knew this framework worked, so I doubled down on it. I'm still using the same process over and over. It works for Amazon. It works everywhere. It will work for you. And fast forward to now, I wake up every single day excited because I write off as much as I want and I have control over my tax future. I take my tax savings and invest them back into my business so I can constantly expand. Debt gone. I have zero stress regarding bills and taxes or how my family is provided for. I'm not hoping, but knowing that I'm not leaving Uncle Sam a tip. I found true happiness because I was able to give my family the life I couldn't have ever dreamed of. More importantly, I am living proof. I did all the right things, but the poor tax system sucked me in, and I found myself overpaying taxes like most working Americans. But I decided I needed to take an avenue to get into the rich tax system. It pushed me to form a different, proven process, and I've been dominating the tax game for myself and my clients ever since. And so that's the story, how I discovered this strategy. Can you give me a 2 in the chat if that motivates you? Let me see here. Yes, that's what I want. That motivates you guys. What's really incredible is that after all, I wanted to see if some of my clients would be able to replicate my results if they did it on their own. And so I shared it with a few people, and then bam, $20,000 saved, $25,000 saved. And it still works to this day. Here's Kareen, who's in our tax reduction strategy program. She wiped out her tax bill completely for the first time in 10 years, where she was previously sending $15,000 every single year to the government. In 10 years, $150,000 in that time, needlessly going to the government, and was completely stopped in her first year with the framework. That's why you're seeing all the results I'm showing you. So many people in the poor system may be like you. If you're stuck in the poor system and feel the same way I did, Steve had no knowledge about tax strategy and saved over $7,600. We had another student save $35,000 in a single year. Yami turned his hobby into a business and was able to write off $12,500. Abe was able to go back over his last 3 years of tax returns and saved $18,000. Now, I want to ask you, can you give me a 2 in the chat if you're one of those people, if you had access to those same strategies and framework, if that would change your life? I mean, imagine writing off as much as you want, reinvesting as much as you want, doing what you want, never leaving Uncle Sam a tip, and building tax-free wealth. And you're doing it without fear of the future, but excitement because you're taking control of your tax situation. Give me a 2 if that would mean everything for you. And the crazy thing is, that's what I wanted to create. A strategy and framework that people can use to go and replicate and reach that breakthrough point. Because all you need for that breakthrough is find one repeatable write-off and then do it over and over again. And here's that framework right here in front of you. We're not going to give you the whole thing because it is private to our tax reduction strategy group, and it can't get saturated. One of the main concerns clients had about this was, won't this hurt your business? And I said, no, there's nothing to saturate. We're playing within the rules of the IRS and the government, within the tax code. I could tell 1 million people it won't hurt my business. I mean, think about it. Once you have my framework, what do I have or any of the people I've shown you today have that you don't? The hardest part that people have with this is actually believing that they can do it. But when you look at the facts, millionaires and billionaires are self-made. They built their wealth from scratch. And I wasn't a tax genius at all. I was trying to get out of Compton, remember? So truly, what advantage did they have? Or did I have that you don't have right now? When we go and show you how this works. And that's what we're here to show you how to do today. We're here to skip to the shortcut because my initial success didn't happen all at once. If anything, it was like a maze with a lot of wrong turns and mistakes before the breakthrough point where I solved the maze and got the cheese, which in this case is the framework. What we're trying to do today is skip all the mistakes and problems like I had and literally bust down the walls of the maze and get you straight to the cheese, the good stuff. So I want to get into this info as fast as possible, and these key points are the quickest way to get people past the hardships of starting from scratch and getting straight to the breakthrough. And first, we have to get you into the rich tax system. I remember when we had a big win at the office for one of the cases we were working on of our clients at the law firm. It was a big day. You could feel the energy within the room. I remember talking to my boss, and he said, you want to go grab lunch? They tend to take all the new people to lunch, but I had so many questions that I wanted to talk to him about. I remember asking him, please tell me, how does this work? How are we helping these people pay literally nothing in taxes? I don't get it. Everything I learned in school told me we all pay the same in taxes. I asked him, well, how do you get into this rich tax system? And he said to me, you can get in a rich tax system by having assets. Wealthy people have assets like a business. This is how you get into the rich tax system for the rich. You must have a business. I remember asking him, isn't it hard setting up a business and all of that? Come on. He said, no, all business is, Karla, is just a few documents sitting in a file folder in a cabinet in some attorney's office. Once you have these files, you get into the rich tax system. That's simple. Money comes and goes, but if you have an education of how money works, you can gain power over it and build wealth. The tax code favors business owners or people with side hustles. That's how you reach wealth. It does not matter the size of the business. I truly understood it now, which is why if you're a W-2, you need a side hustle. According to the BBC.com, jobless claims have risen. It's 20% of the U.S. workforce. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you still have one. Either way, you need to understand how this affects you and how this could potentially affect your future and how to protect yourself. When unemployment is high, there are fewer jobs and a lot of people wanting them. This is a great time to have a side hustle. Your salary and benefits will freeze or shrink. The cost of goods and services will rise, and your taxes are going to raise substantially. Once you get yourself a side business, you'll get tax benefits like the wealthy. You won't have to worry about being laid off a job. You can charge for your products and services, and you can always make income just like the wealthy people do. And you can make yourself recession-proof. However, most people think it's hard to start a business, but I want to show you something. You can have a business without starting one. You can become an affiliate. That means you don't have to create a business. You just make recommendations to people you come in contact with to purchase or buy products from another business, and you take home a commission. You don't have to incur any startup costs, expenses, or anything. You could just work from home. I want to be clear, however, to be a business owner, you do need to do some work. This isn't a cakewalk or some get-rich-quick scheme. You will need to put in the work, period, or you will fail. But this affiliate business model is how a lot of people in our first program started practicing with the framework to achieve the result you've seen today. But like I said at the beginning of the call, our program isn't open at the moment for enrollment. This is just an example of how simple it can be for an employee to make the switch to a business owner. With this, people who have zero experience in either business or taxes join the Taxpreneur program and get to practice how to both run a business and how to apply the write-offs on a pre-made business we provide. This is how easy an affiliate business can be. We provide them with a website and marketing material, and all they have to do is recommend tax services to people, something everyone is legally required to do, period. It's the easiest business in the world, and they don't need tax knowledge. They just need a person, a link to our pages with all our information. If the person uses our services, they get a commission. It's proven to convert people into tax clients day in and day out. We've been doing this for 30 plus years. They can literally partner with me in this program. We have done over 3 million plus, and they get a piece of that. And that piece they get has helped them pay off student loan debt, eliminate credit card debt. They take much needed vacations with their families, max out their yearly IRA contribution, save for retirement. But most importantly, they'll be able to weather the economic storm when inflation affects employees who don't have a second source of income, and it's coming. Other opportunities show people how to make money, how to grow income, but not how to keep that money, how to actually have money left in the bank. That's the true goal, because it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And taxpreneurs keep their money, and they can run their businesses exactly as they want to. If they want just a little extra cash, they can do it. Sophia made $750 off a single referral. What if they wanted to focus more time on it? Well, Stacy, for example, Stacy used a taxpreneur program to make $22,000 from a side business. That's amazing. One of our members even did $30,000 in commissions in 4 months. $30,000 from just recommending tax services to people. They've even been able to get results fast, like Isaiah here, who made $2,100 in 1 week. Or this member who made $4,000 in 1 month as a taxpreneur. Now that you're in a rich tax system, you need to make it work for you by really understanding the TD Wow framework. However, I have a question for you. How many of you believe IRS is looking for a certain list of write-offs? If you believe that, put a 2 in the chat box, because I know a lot of you believe that, and that's what I used to believe too. When I worked at the law firm, I used to believe that exact same thing, that IRS was looking for a certain list of write-offs, until I started working alongside those attorneys, when I really started to realize that there is no certain list of write-offs. It's all about understanding how the tax code works. I started to realize that I'm reading things, but I'm not understanding it like these attorneys are understanding it. Have you ever seen something and you look at, like this picture, for example, if you look at it one way, it looks like a duck. If you look at it the other way, it looks like a rabbit. That's sort of what I was going through. I couldn't understand it the way the attorneys were understanding it. And they were seeing it from a very different perspective, and I needed to try to get that perspective. So I realized that I needed to figure out exactly what the attorneys knew, and I started reading and reading and reading. I said, you know what? I got to put my head in this tax code, because it's something in here that I am missing. And that's when it hit me. They're not looking at a checklist. These attorneys are not going down a checklist and saying, Amazon this, FedEx that. No, they are actually using the law. They're actually following the rules. And that is when I discovered the TD Wow code. That is when, after going through 70,000 pages of the tax code, that I realized it came down to what was actually in the code. That literally it says in code section 162 that you're allowed a deduction for all the ordinary and necessary expenses that are incurred during the taxable year in carrying on your trade or business. Who defines ordinary and necessary? Who knows what it takes to run your business more than you do? You are the business owner. Can anybody think of a family who uses a TV show right now and they write off everything possible? Their cars, their clothes? I think you know exactly who we're talking about. They make it all worth it. Code section 162 is truly the key. And here's the thing. You have to be in the pursuit of income. You can't be out trying to write off almost anything and not be in the pursuit of income. You know why? Because you have to follow the law. And the law states that if you're in the pursuit of income, then you're able to write off those expenses. I finally got it. It clicked. I knew what those attorneys knew. And that's exactly what Lori found. Lori found the TD Wow code to be lethal and saved her almost $5,000. And here's A. A was able to go back and amend his last 3 years of taxes and found $18,000 in saving. And here's Danielle. Danielle used the TD Wow framework and is writing off just about everything that's not bolted down. Now, at the very beginning of this call, I promised you that I was going to show you how I wrote off $300,000 and audit proofed it. So I want to talk to you about that right now. Remember that big client that came when I first got that ad in the Yellow Pages? Well, that client was Amanda. And Amanda was a real estate agent that sold beachfront property. So literally, she was a real estate agent and she was making commissions off of selling property. Amanda decided to brand herself different, and she actually went out and bought a yacht. And this yacht that she wrote off was $300,000 on her taxes, and IRS audited it, and IRS disallowed it, and her tax professional could not even get that yacht proven with the IRS. So I had to get that yacht and take it through my framework. So I had to literally paint the picture. What was Amanda doing? Amanda was selling beachfront property. What was she using the yacht for? She was using a yacht to take her clients on an experience that only Amanda could take her clients on. She was driving around the area where you can see the back of the houses from the bay, from the ocean. She wanted to give her clients that upfront experience. How did she do that? She would send out mailers to her clients so that her clients would register to come on to her yacht. Then the captain would take them out. She would do a presentation. She would talk to them, and Amanda was making connections. She was marketing, and bam, Amanda linked the pursuit of income to that write-off. I had to make it really clear. I had to paint the picture of why the yacht was important. How it was being used, why it was being used, when it was being used, and bam, she got her write-off. And it's really important to understand beneath that, there's other questions that I was able to answer, but we'll get into that a little bit later. If I can learn this, anyone can learn this stuff. Trust me, it's really that simple. You don't need to be a tax expert to cut your tax bill. Not at all. Remember, I failed my first 2 accounting classes like I was the dum-dum in school. Because I was clueless, I made it simple for you to understand it. I literally said it needs to be paint by numbers, 1, 2, fill in the blank, keep it simple. I wanted everything to be extremely simple. I'm tired of people having to work hard. That's why I created a system that was so simple, anybody could use the system. You don't need to understand taxes, accounting, what a write-off is. You don't even need to have an accountant. You only need 2 things, and this is really important. You need to know what is income, and I don't think anybody on this call is confused about how they make their money and where it's coming from. What you also need to know, what is tax deductible? If you report all your income, and when you do, the IRS will allow you to take all the expenses that are ordinary and necessary to earn that income. But I do mean you have to follow the law, follow the rules, and report all of your income. And when you do, you can utilize my TD Wow framework to get to where you need to go. What was Amanda trying to write off a yacht? Who was going to benefit from it? Her clients. When she took them out. Where? On the ocean. Why? Because she wanted to give them a different experience. How? She would send out the mailers. Bam, we got the write-off. You're in the rich tax system now. You now know how to write off almost anything. But what we need to make sure of is that we can audit-proof these write-offs, just like I did for Amanda. Because I know what you might be thinking. But what if I get audited? Or you might be thinking, I'm scared of the IRS, right? I go out and I speak at a lot of trade shows. And in going around talking to people at various trade shows, I get an opportunity to find out what people are thinking. And I remember at my last trade show, I asked the question, how many of you are afraid of the IRS? And the majority of people raised their hand. And I said, how many of you are afraid to be audited by the IRS? And the majority of people raised their hand that they were afraid. That's when I realized I needed to educate them on exactly what the IRS does. Literally, I can remember talking to my dad because I used to be afraid of the dark. And my dad said to me, Karla, you're not afraid of the dark. You're afraid of what you can't see in the dark, what you think is there. That's when I realized you really don't fear IRS. You fear what you don't know about IRS. You fear the unknown. So I need to make sure that you understand what the IRS does. The IRS is literally a collection agency for the government. Their job is to randomly audit taxpayers to make sure they're reporting all of their income and taking only those expenses that are ordinary and necessary. They use IRS letters and IRS agents to enforce collection. The IRS is not always right, people. They can make mistakes too. But here's how you stay safe with the IRS so you don't have to fear them. You literally stay safe by making sure you report all of your income, because not reporting all of your income will trigger an audit for sure. And you make sure you know what the IRS knows. You understand exactly what the IRS does, and having these tools in your toolbox is going to help you not fear the IRS and not worrying about triggering an audit. But I got to tell you, not properly reporting your deductions can trigger an audit too. That's why I created my TD Wow framework. Is so important. You use the TD Wow framework and you go through and you get questions that you can answer and more questions, and you can bulletproof your tax deductions. That's exactly what I did when I was representing Amanda in the yacht audit. You really have to understand how to drill down. For example, you got to understand, why does this benefit you? When you're talking about benefiting, is it benefiting the customer, the supplier, you? I had to really make sure that the auditor knew how this was benefiting Amanda, why it was benefiting. I really had to drill down into all those sub questions that are in my framework to make sure that he really, really got it and understood it. And he did. And at the tax reduction strategy, we are the Harvard of this. I mean, here's Corinne. She was paying $15,000 every year to the IRS for 10 years. $150,000 already lost the taxes with no end in sight, and she put a stop to that instantly. And Darren used the Taxpreneur program to start his business after working as an employee most of his life and wrote off $60,000 in his first year. Evelyn, longtime business owner, let her CPA handle her taxes until she decided to take her write-offs into her own hand, used the program for 2 years, and has written off over $87,000. And here's Adam, found out about the program while still in college. By the time he graduated, he had already set up his entity, and in a year had saved enough to move out of his parents' house and put a down payment on his home. Now that you know how to get into the tax system for the rich, now you know how to use the TD Wow framework, now that you no longer fear the IRS, it's so important that you understand that you need some reinforcement and some feedback. Stop playing the game by yourself. Stop trying to do it alone. And what this means is, if you look at anybody that has been successful, they have always surrounded themselves by a group of people doing the same thing. Think about it. Do you think Magic Johnson would be as good as he is if he didn't have anyone to practice with, no one to compete against? No, that would be insane. He wouldn't even be playing basketball, because that's not how getting good at anything works. And if you look at how we are as humans, especially when it comes to study groups, our success, we conform to what we are around. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. So, for example, as a wife gets pregnant and starts to weigh more, the husband is 80 to 90% more likely to put on weight as well. We even have a term for it. It's called sympathy weight. People that join study groups with top performing students, regardless of their past scores, see huge success. People that hang out with people who do drugs, even if they have never taken any before, do drugs. People that hang out with other tax strategists that are doing the same thing you're doing usually end up doing well at that same thing. Think about me at the law firm, because competitiveness is naturally going to be there. Of course, support is at the forefront. Competitiveness should never be a negative thing with people looking to tear each other down, but healthy competition full of support and building each other up provides even better results for the group as a whole. Can you think of anything that you can become good at where you aren't a part of a community? Just think about that for a second. You just get good in a vacuum. That's not how it works, because your path to tax-free wealth, to success, isn't a straight line. It's going to be all over the place. And when you join a group and find mentors doing what you want to do, let's just face it, in the beginning, you feel a little bit of pressure because you're feeling like you got to do what they're doing, right? Of course you do. But eventually, if you stay a part of that group, you start to realize that the people in that group are going to help you get through the process. It's almost like bowling, right? You can bowl a gutter ball, or we can put up the bumper guards and you bounce off them until you get to the place you're trying to get to. But if you don't have that group of people, the gutter practically becomes a certainty. You don't have anyone to push you forward and bounce things off of. So now you have a business, you have your framework, you've audit-proofed your write-offs, you have the feedback. Now you take what works and repeat, and write off as much as you will settle for. The key is that you're able to repeat this process with any write-off. If you can only replicate this with 1 or 2 write-offs, then there's not much point to this whole drill. Cloning what you did for 1 write-off and applying it over and over all your write-offs is where the value is for me and for so many other people. So guys, how was that? Give me a 2 in the chat if you found this to be incredibly valuable. I mean, we basically gave you the whole entire picture right now, literally. And so far, you've been literally given the entire roadmap to 6-figure tax savings. Yes, literally 6-figure savings. And I want to check in and do an accountability check. Is it 30 days simple? When I say simple, let's define what I mean by simple. We all know we can get results if given enough time. So are we talking 5 years? Are we talking a year? Are we talking 30 days a time? With these tax strategies and tactics, could you find a repeatable process in the next month? Can you give me a 2 in the chat if you can find a repeatable write-off? Of course you can. Tons of other people have done it. Here's Josh. Josh started the program, amended his previous year's taxes, and got a check for $1,100 from the government. Heck, with 30 days, give me a 2 if you can do this as a W-2 employee. Yeah, we all see it all the time. Jessica here used this when she was confused on how to start a business. Now she has great results. She was a W-2 employee and made the switch to a business owner by utilizing write-offs to increase her monthly income to $9,500. And guys, that's what this event is all about. This is the whole reason we've done this event. Because if you look at this chart here, I was 33 years old. The green blocks represent the amount of time I had already spent on earth. The gray blocks represent the amount of time I had left. I want to spend as many of these gray blocks in a state of happiness and fulfillment. In order to do that, I had to have financial control so I can be free. The question I have for you is, when are you going to solve this problem if it's a problem for you right now? If you're not satisfied with the amount you're paying in taxes year after year, and if you're not able to choose how to spend most of your life, when are you going to solve this problem? Because the whole focus of this event is the longer you wait to solve this problem, the less time you have to enjoy life to its maximum. The less time you have to have a stress-free life, the less time you have to enjoy financial freedom. Can you give me a 2 if that makes sense? Honestly, that's why we push this so hard. You don't have to wait 40 years. You don't have to wait until you're nearly out of grade blocks when you're 70 or 80 years old to enjoy your money. You've seen through this process so many other people that have already solved that problem. And in this event, we're giving you the cliff notes, doing this as fast as possible. We try to cram as much as we can into this. The question I have for you right now is, give me a 2 if you would like all the notes. And not just all the notes, but my exact framework, looking over the shoulder as I conduct audit-proof write-offs, watching as I do it over and over again, and being supported by my entire community that's actually done it over and over again. How would your life be different? Give me a 2 if you think your life